Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalaka Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Completely rejecting all religious principles, all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vikasa in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. The word satam is hearing, atra, translated as devotees, and this is the normal translation of this word. Satam, satvata is another common word which means a Vaishnava. One who is in relation with Sat, the truth, the reality, as is the subject matter of the first verse. Satyam param dhimahi. So in a previous lecture I discussed somewhat about the meanings and nuances of the word Sat. Now, the question arose yesterday that if this Bhagavatam is understandable by the Parama Nirmatsaranam Satam, the highest, 100% pure in heart devotees, then what about all of us? And what about statements such as, there are many such statements. Mataji last night, is she here today? Who made that question? She alluded to that verse. Akamaka sarvakamova moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one is full of desires, desireless, or desiring liberation, one should intensely worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Is the word intense translated as intensive? Because intensive is a different word in English. There's intense and intensive. It's a different, similar but different word. So that's there, and there are many directions to study and read the Bhagavatam, to hear, well, especially to hear the Bhagavatam. This, for instance, in this verse itself, Sadhyo Kingva Parair Ishvara Sadhyo Hridya Varudyate. What need is there of any other scripture? Because as soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. And there are many other directions throughout the Bhagavatam, or indications that by regularly hearing the Bhagavatam, the heart becomes purified, and then one can understand Krishna. Can anyone think of any example? The clue is there, by regularly hearing the Bhagavatam. Verses. Nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata seva. That by regularly hearing, or by serving the Bhagavatams, which in this context is understood to mean regularly hearing the Bhagavatam, because this is in conjunction with the verse Shrinvatam Swatata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Vidyantas To Yibhadrani Vidhunoti Surit Satam. The word Satam comes into devotees. Krishna, who is the best well-wisher of his devotees, or the heart-to-heart friend of his devotees, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of those who regularly and attentively hear his messages. There are many such verses throughout the Bhagavatam recommending hearing the Bhagavatam, the result of which is that the heart will be cleansed and one will become Krishna conscious. Or rather, to be more accurate, one's dormant Krishna consciousness will be revived. There's another verse in this. Well, there's so many verses actually. So many verses in this regard. So although it's stated here that this is understandable by devotees who are fully pure in heart, it doesn't mean that it's only for devotees. Well, in one sense it is only for devotees who are fully pure in heart, because only they can fully understand it. That's in the 12th canto we have Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsyam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana because it is Dharma Projita Kaitava. It completely rejects all cheating kinds of religion, all kinds of cheating, anything. So therefore, it is the spotless Purana. And is very dear to the Vaishnavas. Herein, yes, by which, Yasmin Paramahamsyam, Jnanam Amalam, by which the spotless knowledge that is of the Paramahamsas, Jnanam Param Giyate, this topmost knowledge is sung within here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Atra, the same word that we find here in this verse, Atra Jnana Viraga Sahitam Naishkamyam Avishkritam. Herein is revealed that knowledge or the method how to live in this world without being on the material platform. Naishkamya, the platform of working within this world and not being attached to it. This, in relationship to Bhakti, gives the indication of Yukta Vairagya. And that Naishkamya or Bhakti Yoga is conjoined with Jnana and Viraga, knowledge and renunciation. Yeah, so from all the words of Bhagavatam, you can link it up like a big network. See, from this, the concept of Yukta Vairagya expands. So every word of the Bhagavatam is rich with meaning, but it's all to be understood. Everything is to be understood in relation to everything else. Everything is interrelated. Nothing should be taken out of context. This is for those who are interested in kaitav dharma, cheating attempts at religion. They are very expert in taking statement. They'll take one statement out of context and recite that or cite that, as evidence to support their theory. So everything is to be understood within the context of these. All the Bhagavatam is to be understood within the context of these verses given here, which are again to be the essence which is related here is to be understood in the expanded form in which each point in these verses are described within the text of Bhagavatam itself. And the commentaries are also required, especially Srila Jiva Goswami in his Shat-Shandarbha has extracted the whole purpose and essence and teachings point by point of the whole Bhagavatam. One point, another point, another point, another point. He gives evidence from the Bhagavatam. Later on, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur did the same thing in his writings. All the acharyas, they all contribute their appreciation, understanding, and realization, because Bhagavatam is unlimited. Srila Rupa Goswami has extracted the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, what is the purpose of life and how to attain it. Which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda Rai, Sadhya Sadhana Tattva. What is the purpose of life and how to attain it? This is implicit in these, actually even in the first verse of Bhagavatam. So, Rupa Goswami describes Anyabhilashita Shunya Jnana Kamadina Vritamanukul Krishna Nushilanam Bhakti Uttama. That the Uttama Bhakti, the highest platform of Bhakti, which is also a definition of Uttama Bhakti, is that without any personal desire, or at least cultivating that. One may be on the platform of Uttama Bhakti without being fully purified, but because the aim is to become fully purified, therefore that is considered Uttama Bhakti as compared to Kama Mishra Bhakti or Jnana Mishra Bhakti, which are the coverings, which if one is practicing devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a manner in which he's not cultivating karma or jnana, that favorable cultivation is called Uttama Bhakti. So you get the point that one may not be have attained the highest platform, but it's the highest platform of cultivation. And when one fully situated on that platform, then it is, of course, the Paramahamsa platform. So and that verse, this Anyabhilashita Shunyam verse, this parallels the Bhagavatam verse, Dharma Svanushtita Savaipung Sang Paro Dharma Vitopati Radhoksaji Ahaituki Pratihata Ye Atmasva Prasidati. You all know this verse, don't you? So you can see how it's in different words and with a slightly different perspective. Rupa Goswami is defining what is Uttama Bhakti, or in the Bhagavatam verse, Param Dharma. And again he quotes Rupa Goswami with his Anyabhilashita Shunyam verse, quotes the Dharma, Savaipung Sang Param Dharma. So, this Bhagavatam is also suitable for persons who are on the path of Uttama Bhakti, who are not cultivating the enviousness of cheating religion, which falls under the categories of Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. They've understood Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishera Banda, Amrita Baliya Deva Kai. What is that? Nana Joni Shudafiri Kadarja Bhakhan Kori. What is that? What's the last line? Say Tar Janma Adhopateja. Quote that for a long time. Rotam Das has summed this up, that Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, they are pots of poison, which those who are attached to them consider to be nectar. But the result of considering these cheating processes as nectar is that one has to take birth again and again in various species of life. And even down to the lowest level, Kadarja Bhakhan Kori, eating all kinds of horrible things and falling down into the lowest level. And we see that in Shastra, how even Indra can become a pig. It's gone up so high. And by his karma kanda activities, he's reached the ultimate platform of a karma kanda, which is to become Indra. And then some mistake, and again it becomes a pig. And then Nahush he took over the post, and he became a snake. So karma kanda is very dangerous, and even jnana kanda, one may become purified by not desiring to engage in material activities, but it's not real purification. It's because anadrita yushmadangraya, because they're not. They neglect to worship the lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, although such persons can attain liberation due to not being grossly engaged in karmic activities, their consciousness becomes purified, but it's avishuddha buddhi. Purified means they're not interested. The jnanis, they're not interested in going to the heavenly planets or anything in this material world, but they haven't attained. They didn't have any attraction to Krishna, to serve Krishna. They may have even done so in a formal manner, because without a touch of bhakti, one cannot even attain the mukti. But it's basically an envy of Krishna, which the result of which is yener vindaksha vimuktamaninas. They think they're liberated. They think, now I'm fully liberated. But yener vindaksha vimuktamaninas tvayasta bhavat avishuddha buddhaya. But their consciousness is not fully purified. And therefore, aruhya kritshrena parang padang tata patantyadho nadrita yushmadangraya. Even after laboriously, with very troublesome sadhana, having gone up to the spiritual atmosphere, they fall down again. It means they stopped material activities, they stopped material desires. We got out of the material world, got merged in the Brahma-jyoti as far as possible, because the living being can't actually merge in the true sense of the term. He's existent, he doesn't cease to exist. There's a sense of merging. But due to envy of Krishna, material desires remain dormant. They're not apparent or manifest, but they're dormant within the heart of the supposedly purified person, because this seed of material desires is envy of Krishna, or which is manifest. They may not be blatantly envious of Krishna, going with placards saying we hate Krishna, but their very refusal to take interest in Krishna or to serve him is indicative of their envy of Krishna. And therefore because they don't go up to the platform of serving Krishna, they only go up beyond the platform of material activities. So they go up and out of that. They got out of the material atmosphere, but they didn't enter the purely spiritual atmosphere. And therefore, they fall down again. The material desires become manifest. You have to come to the material world to manifest. The manifest desires, to manifest them in action, one has to come to the material world. So the Srimad Bhagavatam cannot be understood by persons who are cultivating material desires. It may be approached by devotees who still have material desires due to long incarceration in the material world, but it can be entered into or begun to be understood by persons who at least follow those who are 100% pure in heart. And actually this Bhagavatam will not be relishable or even acceptable to persons who are not cultivating the desire for pure Krishna consciousness. You may think, well, this Bhagavatam is very heavy. It's all this condemnation of non-devotees, condemnation of persons who are materialistic. That is compared by Lord Rishabdev to stool-eating hogs. There's condemnation of everything but pure devotional service to Krishna. And it may seem very heavy, and it is, no doubt, because anything else but pure devotional service to Krishna is simply a disaster for the conditioned soul. And we're so much used to living in a disaster that we think it's normal. It's like you find people will they'll live on the side of a volcano. It's very fertile soil, very good. Any time that volcano may erupt. But so far so good. It didn't erupt yesterday, it didn't erupt the day before, it didn't erupt the day before, it didn't erupt the day before that. So they get used to it and they think, well, no problem. And then one fine day or night, there's a fireworks display and they become mummified in the lava eventually, and then 2,000 years or so later people go and dig them up and say, oh look, there's someone who was running away and they didn't get away in time, and here's their body, nicely preserved, we can stick it in a museum. So this is foolishness, and the Bhagavatam points this out in unequivocal terms. No false politeness is admitted herein. It's not said very palatably for the non-devotees. It's very clearly stated. Well, one reason for that is it's meant for the devotees anyway. Another reason is that non-devotees, they won't like to approach this Bhagavatam. Right from the very beginning, Shukadeva Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj that, what did he say? Who can think of any of the first few verses spoken in the first chapter, beginning of the first chapter of the second canto? Come on, tell us in Sanskrit. You're supposed to be a Sanskrit scholar. No, what Shukadeva said to Parikshit. Yeah, but after the first thing he congratulated him on his questions. But then what did he say? There's several verses. Anyone? Nidraya hriyate naktam vyavayena chavavaya. What's the next line? Apashyata kutumba bharanena. Divachate rajan kutumba bharanena. So he says that materialistic persons, they spend their night in either sleeping or sex, and the daytime maintaining their families. So he starts off with, Shukadeva Goswami, very saintly boy, looking very nice, sits down, welcomed by the sages, and immediately out come the mortars of blasting materialism. And we'll find that he, in the course of Bhagavatam, blasts the Jnana Kanda also. It's quoting so many great devotees of the past and quoting the Supreme Lord himself. So this Bhagavatam won't be relishable to the non-devotees. Only the devotees will accept it as it is. And the non-devotees, they may approach the Bhagavatam considering it an object of their sense gratification, because that's what non-devotees do. They consider everything an object of their sense gratification, because that's the way they see the world. That's called Jagat Darshan as compared to Golok Darshan. They see everything is meant for my sense enjoyment. So here's Krishna. He's also meant for my sense gratification. Bhagavad Purana, that's also meant for my sense gratification. But wait a minute, that shlok's not very good for sense gratification. Okay, we're not going to look at that one. We're not even going to consider that one. That's on a very low platform. So they completely reject all verses which point out their cheating propensity. Instead of accepting Bhagavatam as it is, which completely rejects all religious activities which are materially motivated, the non-devotees who approach Bhagavatam completely reject all verses which completely reject their own position. So they're cheating. I mean, the cheating propensity can be brought into even the recitation of Bhagavatam. And then we like to hear nice stories of Krishna dancing, but we don't like to hear all the other things. Because we think, well, Krishna's dancing is very nice, but his telling me that I'm a rascal, that's not very nice. So we like this part of Krishna. We like the sweet part of Krishna. But everything about Krishna is sweet. If we attempt to reject part of Krishna and convert him into a spastic, then we won't get the actual Krishna. That is violence to Krishna. To attempt to cut out part of his body. I don't like this part of Bhagavatam. Cut that out. So, Bhagavatam can be accepted by devotees who are fully pure in heart. One has to be pure in heart to hear Bhagavatam as it is. One who is not pure in heart will pick and choose which parts we like. They don't want to accept Bhagavatam or the message of the Bhagavatams as it is. Therefore, if the Guru who is speaking Bhagavatam, they say, well, we like some of his instructions, we'll accept these and we won't accept others. You heard that before? We'll accept those things of Prabhupada which we consider spiritual, and the material things we'll reject, because we like the spiritual part, but the material part telling us how to live, and we don't like that. So, that's not the way to accept Bhagavatam. That's not the way to accept. The Guru who speaks Bhagavatam, this Bhagavatam, I didn't say the last line of that verse, that's relevant here. That's Srimad Bhagavatam Purana Mamalam Vaishnavadam Priya. There are so many points, you go down one lane or another lane. So back to so because the Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana, very dear to the Vaishnavas, in which the knowledge of the Paramahamsas is recited, and herein is revealed or discovered the path of living in this world, not being attached to it, with knowledge. So therefore, touch Shrinvan Supatam Vicharana Paro Imuchen Naraha. Therefore, this Bhagavatam should be heard, carefully recited. Chachrinvan Supatan Vicharana Paro. Vicharana Paro. Applying one's intelligence to understand, not just recite it as a kind of parrot-like activity. Sometimes we'll see in certain parts of the Bhagavatam say that if one recites this, he will get this result or that result. And we often see people, I've seen, of course not much nowadays in India because people are less pious, but a generation or so ago it was quite common that we used to see people recite, a chapter of Bhagavad-gita or some part of Shastra every day, but they just read it, just like this. They just read the Sanskrit without any attempt to understand what is there. Because it says if you recite this, you get a pious result. So they recite it. They have faith in that, but they don't try to understand what the message is, because they just want the pious result. But Vyasadeva says, Vicharana Paro, apply one's judgment. Vichar means consideration. So very carefully trying to understand what is this subject matter. Again, this doesn't mean that one should just bring one's wild intelligence. But first of all, Trinvan, first of all, hear it, study the matter carefully, and consider it carefully. Try to understand it. And one who does that, then he vimuchen naraha. He attains the complete liberation from this material world. In other words, he becomes fully Krishna conscious. This is in contradistinction to the Mayavadis who have avishuddha buddhi, and therefore not completely purified, and therefore they are vimuktamani. They think that they're fully liberated, but one actually becomes fully liberated by hearing, reciting, and carefully considering the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is meant for devotees. It is only understandable by devotees. One who is fortunate enough to hear from pure devotees the message of Bhagavatam, even in the neophyte stage, therefore it's said here, sadhyo, even once or immediately, if one hears this, then Krishna becomes manifest within the heart. Whereas those who may be very expert in studying Bhagavatam in an external way, or even explaining it, if they're not cultivating this purity of heart, which comes from surrender to Krishna, Mamekam Sharanam Raja. Remember, this Bhagavatam begins where the Gita, the message of Gita, leaves off. For those who are not doing that, they, although for all their study of Bhagavatam, they don't approach Krishna. They don't get Krishna, because Krishna is given by Krishna is in Bhagavatam. Krishna is Bhagavatam. He is the subject matter of Bhagavatam. He is Bhagavatam, and Krishna is given by his devotees, who can actually understand Bhagavatam due to their purity of heart, which is based on their surrender to Krishna. So others who recite Bhagavatam, they may appear to be devotees, but they didn't get it. They missed it. And they may appear to be devotees with ecstatic symptoms, but it's all part of cheating religion. So Bhakti, this mystery of Bhakti is not, this can be understood, the science, the complete science of Bhakti Yoga, nectar of devotion. That is described by Rupa Goswami, that there are certain devotees who appear to be, or not actually devotees, but they appear to be highly advanced in devotion. But that is ratyabhas. That is only a semblance of attachment to Krishna. It's not the real thing. And one's position or in devotional service, that can be understood not so much from symptoms, rolling on the ground, crying, tears, talking about gopis and all this kind of thing, but for one who is actually on the path of bhakti, then he must be fixed in bhakti siddhanta. Chaitanya Charitamrita is it is this summation of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the exposition of the actual message of Bhagavatam as revealed through the teachings and pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In there we find this term Bhakti Siddhanta. Bhakti Siddhanta Viruddha Arasa Bhas. Shunile Prabhur Chitte Nahoy Ulash. That any statements which were against the proper conclusions of Bhakti, namely Bhakti Siddhanta, and Rasa Bhas, that which is not actual rasa, but just it's a semblance of rasa, but not the proper, or not rasa in a way that will be actually pleasing to Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not pleased to hear this. So talks may be of bhakti, or they might be of siddhanta, but if the two are not fully conjoined, if bhakti means with siddhanta, and siddhanta means bhakti. So bhakti without siddhanta, or so-called siddhanta without bhakti, it's neither bhakti nor siddhanta, and therefore it's not pleasing to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So one should be sat, actually desiring the truth, and under the guidance of the truth, those who are truly situated in Krishna consciousness. Then one can enter into Srimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, what will happen? That will become converted in the name of Bhagavatam recitation. It will be just another version of cheating religion. That's all. Even the nature of this world and the perverted nature of the people within this world is that even that which is most high and most pure, they're very much capable of tweaking it and converting it to something lower. And we find that even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, shortly after his disappearance, or even in his presence, he was being misinterpreted. And in his name, people were engaging in some of the most debased activities. Hare Krishna. I'll stop there. Any question about this? Yes, please.
You said that Uttama Bhakti is given if there is some still not purified things in the heart, gives the motivation.
Yeah, Uttama Bhakti means Krishna Anushilana, means a cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So even, and it's Anyabhilashita Shunya. It doesn't say Anyabhilasha Shunya. Anyabhilasha means without any other desire. And Anyabhilashita means the concept of having any other desire. So there's a significant difference.
So I'm wondering, when we are then cut out, when we are Jnana Mishra, Karma Mishra, as devotees, because we are not cultivating anymore, but still...
Well, when do we come from the platform of Kama Mishra Bhakti and Jnana Mishra Bhakti? When we take initiation into the Sampradaya of pure devotees. That's supposed to be the commitment to fully surrender to Krishna through the parampara. That's the point. When the meaning of Diksha is not simply sitting in a ceremony. That's why Prabhupada said Diksha is only a formality. When he said that, he was referring to the ceremony. Because if one has not already taken the vow or made the commitment to follow the path of pure devotion, he's not fit to sit in the ceremony anyway. And if he's made that commitment, then for such a person, the Diksha is the ceremony is a formality of the commitment which is already made. So that's stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in teachings to, was it Rupa or Sanatana? I don't remember the Bengali, but now I am yours, Krishna. When the devotee says this, then Krishna accepts it. Dikko kale bhakta kariyata shama panshe kale Krishna tare kariyata sham. At the time of Diksha means surrender to Krishna. Now I am not my own. I'm yours. But Thakur says, was that Sarvasva Tomar Charane Shompi. I have all my everything, all my hopes, desires, or to speak of material chattels or possessions. I've surrendered that all to you. So that is the entrance into Uttama Bhakti. when one is not cultivating karma kanda or jnana kanda, when one accepts the principles of Bhagavatam. Therefore we have to hear Bhagavatam regularly and in a mood of submissive hearing, to accept the principles. Otherwise, if we cultivate karma kanda or jnana kanda, then it's not the path of bhakti given by Rupa Goswami. It will not lead to the Krishna of Rupa Goswami. It might lead to the Mahabharat Krishna, or the TV Mahabharat Krishna. You might get some conception of Krishna as being the provider of my material. In Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's language, we may, if we cultivate devotion or whatever else you want to call it to Krishna, considering him to be the supplier of fuel for the fire of our material desires. And I have a big blazing fire of material desire. Krishna, come along, carry this and carry more fuel, throw it in, so that the fire may blaze more. Well, we may get that, Krishna. We may get this, our Father who art in heaven, give us this day our daily bread. But we won't get Rupa Goswami's Krishna. Shukadev Goswami's Krishna. Seventh canto in particular. That's described. Yeah. Certain things can be difficult, yeah.
But then I also read rules and regulations that suggested for sannyasis it was a bit more difficult actually, and I read 2 months about how it is, because I read receptions going to 7 houses and only 7 houses and then back and all this. And he said, well, that was for in the West, it doesn't work. The way that for sannyasis, you just follow for I was wondering what about Vikasa, that they have to follow all the rules in sannyasis?
One should follow the principles of Bhagavatam according to the direction of one's Acharya, who is the living manifestation of the Bhagavatam principles. In that sense, certain principles of Bhagavatam don't apply in the modern age. The basic principles of Bhagavatam are applicable in all times, places and circumstances. But certain principles or certain directions of the Bhagavatam are specific to certain times, places and circumstances. Just like, for instance, it's stated in the Bhagavatam that a brahmachari should wear a belt of manju grass. Now, I don't think we have any manju grass here. It's cultivatable, just like tulasi is cultivatable in the West. But it's not an essential principle. We have to distinguish between principles and details. How we have to distinguish means not we, but that is given by our acharyas. They do the distinguishing for us. No qualified brahmanas. Well, that especially, yeah.
What about this year, many devotees do yagas in the church?
Well, these yagyas that devotees perform for their children, etc., they work in as much as the essence is Krishna Bhakti. It's invoking the mercy of the Lord upon their children or whatever. As far as the procedures are concerned, Vedic brahmanas would laugh or cry. or get angry. But the essence is invoking the mercy of the Lord, and that is laudable. No, family life also isn't obligatory. Nothing's obligatory except to smartavya satatang Vishnu, vismartavya najatu chit. And within, always to remember Krishna, never to forget Him. Within that, some things are so important as to be almost obligatory, such as chanting the names of Krishna. For us, 16 rounds, because that's given by our Acharya. But then we find the gopis, they weren't chanting their rounds in the morning. Banshidas Babaji Maharaj, he wasn't chanting any rounds. So they're pure devotees, so on a certain level, even chanting the holy name, of course the pure devotees, they chant the holy name spontaneously, but not in a regulated way. They may not. We find the 6 Goswamis, Sankha, Purvaka, Nama, Gana, Nativi, they were chanting in a regulated way. That we can understand that they were setting the example for others. Otherwise, for pure devotees, there's no need to follow any regulations, even the regulation to regularly chant the holy names. They just do it spontaneously, as and when the inspiration comes to them, which is most of the time anyway. So, are these rituals obligatory for householders? No, but they are recommended. Because householder life means one is having a good dose of mixture with the material world. Concepts tend to be, or one's outlook tends to be quite materialistic. So, the yagyas or all such ceremonies, these sanskars, they help the children, and they also serve as religious social occasions. Householders need social life; it's part of family life. The rishis in the forest, they may not have had much. The householders. Most of the rishis were married, so they may not have had much social life as we consider it in the modern age, but for most people, the social life, mixing with their friends, so to do that centered around ceremony for invoking the mercy of the Lord on one's children, it's an ideal way to put the two things together. So it's recommended. There's another important consideration in spiritual advancement at all levels is acting according to one's adhika or level. And if one tries to jump over that, adhika langhan, that's called, then tend to get into trouble by trying to act on a platform that, a higher platform than one is eligible for. So yeah, these things, sanskars are good for householders, and mostly for the children. And our devotees, they can do it somehow. They have some kind of fire sacrifice. Even without a fire sacrifice, they can have a harinam sacrifice. Like Shraddha. It's not exactly a sanskar. That can be performed by calling the devotees and having kirtan and giving them prasad and speaking Krishna conscious way about the departed soul. That's how Vaishnavas, at least our Gauriya Vaishnavas, perform Shraddha. It's recommended. For instance, anything else? There's less and less opportunity to hear proper Srimad Bhagavatam. Well, there are lots and lots of recordings. There are so many recordings of lectures. I would think there'd be more and more opportunity. Well, you can't go wrong if you do that. Although Prabhupada, if you just listen to Prabhupada's lectures and read his books, like I say, you're definitely going to get Bhagavatam as it is. But of course, Srila Prabhupada also told us to have Bhagavatam classes. And in Prabhupada's presence, we could have also just listened to recordings of Prabhupada's lectures or just read his books, but Prabhupada told his disciples to have Bhagavatam classes with the devotees giving the lectures. So that's part of Prabhupada's legacy and his instructions also. If we're so But if we feel that we can't get the real thing in any other way, then we could do that. As Prabhupada states in one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that if one thinks that the Krishna conscious movement, I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing here, is just full of all cheating devotees and useless people, then one may associate directly with the spiritual master. So I guess you could take it like that. If you don't find satisfaction elsewhere, you can just listen to Prabhupada and read his books. Yes, please. What is Bhakti Siddhanta? Well, the essence of it is very simple, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality. That's summed up in the Dashamut. That's summed up that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, we're all His servants, we're meant to serve Him without any personal desire. That's a summary of it. So if one has that understanding, then that is Bhakti Siddhanta. The details of it, well, yes, some learning is required to understand the details. But that's if one has that understanding, then all the statements of Shastra or statements of anyone else, they're all to be judged by this understanding. What is the symptom of one who's fixed in Bhakti Siddhanta? That he always acts, mind, body and words, always fully engaged for the pleasure of Krishna. That's it. It's the natural result.